Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to remove all the AC components from an 88 to 91 Civic or CRX. Now we're going to remove the entire AC system, including the compressor, the bracket, the receiver dryer. We still have the condenser in front of the radiator, all the AC lines, and the evaporator core and expansion valve that are inside underneath the glove box. Now, as a disclaimer, before attempting this job, it's illegal to vent the R12 into the atmosphere. It's also harmful if you breathe a heavy amount into your lungs, so just take that as a precaution before starting this job. On a lot of these old 88, 91 Civic and CRXs, I'd say 90% of them, the AC system no longer works, and it has already leaked out, such as the case with the system that I'm working on today. For those of you curious about the two compressor styles, this one is a Matsushita. You could tell by how far apart the fittings are. On ones that have the two fittings, they'll be like right here. That one is a sand-in compressor. What I'm going to do first is go ahead and remove the bumper. There is a line that goes across the front of the condenser that we need to get removed, and there's no way to access it other than removing the front bumper. Remove both screws on both sides of the bumper. Remove the two screws for the bumper lights. Underneath, if your car is attached, remove both 10mm bolts that hold the bottom of the bumper to the crossmember. Remove the two bolts on the inside of the bumper. These are 12mm if you have a 90 or 91. They're 10mm if you have an 88 or 89. And with those removed, off comes the bumper. And here's a look at those connections that are impossible to reach with the bumper on. If your car still has this breather tube, go ahead and remove that. 10mm bolts, just two of them. Once you've gotten there, there's really no specific order that you need to go in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the intake arm. This one is an OEM one, so it just has a little screw for the clamp. I'm just going to remove that real quick. And then I'm going to pull the charcoal canister out of the way. That way I'm going to essentially remove these upper lines first. Then once those are out of the way, makes it a lot easier to get to the condenser fan and the compressor itself. The intake arm removed. Charcoal canister, it just slides up. You can see it fits right into this bracket right there. I just kind of leave that out of the way so we can get to the two connections to the evaporator core. But first, if you have any of these little brackets that are on the car, a lot of these are 10mm. There's a 10mm bolt on the back side of this bracket which is holding the lines to the battery tray. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to pull the battery and get to that. See this lower bracket right here? There's a 10mm that connects it to the battery tray. So I'm going to get that removed. Then next I'm going to remove this bracket, a 10 on the fan and then a 10 on the line itself. Here's that 10mm bolt that's connected to the battery tray. Get that removed. Next, get this bracket removed. You may not necessarily need to remove this one. You can if you just want it off the line. But once you remove it, go ahead and put the 10 back in because this is what holds the fan to the radiator. Now we're going to get this upper line removed. I use a Compressor wrench and I have a 24 on here. It's large, but it's good enough because it'll hold it in place. So just bust that one loose and do the same for the top line at the evaporator core up against the firewall. And once you have both fittings completely spun off, you should be able to separate the line. Just like that. Now we need to wiggle it out somehow. Come around through there. Now that wasn't difficult to remove. Without an arm bar, you would have been able to easily pull it up and out of the way. So now we need to disconnect the lower line. The reason, if we disconnect it here, it'll allow us to pull it down out towards the front of the car so we can get to both these connections a lot easier. So go ahead and disconnect this line. This one you'll use a 17 wrench and a 19 wrench. Those fit perfectly. And with it disconnected at the firewall, we can now pull it forward a little bit more just to get our wrenches on there and get these connections loosened. The combination that worked for me were a 16 and a 19mm. Now before removing that line, disconnect the pressure switch. You're going to squeeze on the little clip right there and just slide it away. And with the pressure switch disconnected, you can now wiggle it around and let's get this line removed. Now I'm going to work on getting the receiver dryer removed. It's a little easier if you remove the overflow reservoir, just to give you that extra room. And your next step is removing both of the nuts on the lines. Let me move the HID kit out of the way. Right here, remove both these nuts that are connected to the receiver dryer. And those are both a 19mm. Now your car still may have the wiper wash reservoir in here, so sometimes you may need to disconnect it. Since you have the bumper off, where it connects to the car, like all the 10mm spots, you could essentially loosen those and then move it around if you need a little bit of extra room to get to this. But once you have both the lines pulled from it, we can now remove this by taking off the 10mm bolt which holds the receiver dryer connected to that bracket, and then remove the second one which connects the other side of the bracket right here underneath the line. Now at the front of the bumper, we can go ahead and pull this line forward now, and we can get to the other side of this. Let's get these removed. And then next, we're going to remove this one right here, and then we're going to get both these lines pulled. This one is a 19mm, and this combination is the same as the other side, 16mm and a 19mm. Connected, you should be able to wiggle these around and just pull them straight out the top. Very, very easy. Just get this one fed through the hole. There we go. And the same with the front one. Now just pull it off. This one, you know, you might need to remove your T-bracket first, but I don't think so. Let me see if I can just spin it. Nah, you can spin it. This one is stripped down there, so it just hangs, unfortunately. I'm gonna see if I can't drill that out today and put a bolt back in there if it's not damaged. But we're gonna need to remove the T-bar anyway, just so we can get the condenser pulled. That's next. So on your car, if it's still there, remove the 10mm bolt at the bottom, remove the one in the center, and the two on each side. Moving the T-bar, go ahead and disconnect the line to the condenser on the top, and then on both sides, remove these two 10mm. The reason I didn't remove them yet is I like it to hold it in place while I just bust this one loose, and then you can remove them. Now it's time to get the two lines to the compressor removed. 12mm, this one right here, and this line right there. Next, on both sides, remove the two 10mm on each side of the radiator stays. Now the small line will come out very easily, and the reason we remove the radiator stays is because we need this room out here to be able to squeeze this line out and around the radiator. Go ahead and remove this 10mm bolt that holds the line to the AC fan. From a little better angle, that way I can use both my hands. Let's try getting this line pulled up in front of the fan, and then we have that room to get this line removed. Now with that removed and push the radiator forward, we should be able to slide the condenser straight out. Now disconnect the last 10mm bolt holding the condenser fan to the radiator. Also disconnect the relay which is holding the relay to the fan right here. It's a 10mm also. Then you're going to disconnect, you're going to just slide these two apart. That's for the AC compressor power. And then the fan, we're going to want to disconnect this one. Slide this little clip up and pull that away. Go ahead and pull the fan out now that everything's disconnected. And then the wiring, if it's connected anywhere, just undo the little clips. We're just going to pull it to the side for now. And we are going to remove the wiring also. And with all those pieces out of the way, it's a lot easier to get to the compressor. We need to remove the tensioner. Usually this nut here on the end of the pulley is tight, so use a 14mm wrench and back that off a little bit. We need to get the tensioner loosened. I use a 1/4-inch socket with a couple extensions, and that lets you get, let me see if you can see it. You can't see the nut, or the bolt, I'm sorry, but the head of it goes, it belongs to this right here, this shaft. So we need to get that on there and spin it down, that way we can get the tensioner loosened. You can see it dropping already. We're going to get that AC belt removed. once you have it down far enough, you should be able to just slide it right off. There we go. Now to remove the compressor, you have 4 12mm bolts. 1, 2 right here. The bottom 2, you can barely see it right here, and the other head is right there. Easy to notice, they're all facing the same direction. Get all 4 of those pulled. And a little tip for these, you're not going to be able to pull these all the way out because they're hitting the radiator. But as long as they're loose, that's all that matters, because once we have all 4 loose, the compressor will come free from the bracket and we can pull it straight up. So don't worry if you can't get the 2 that are on the inside out all the way. And with all those removed, it kind of sat down on the cross member. Now we just need to find a way to pull it out. I'm going to set my camera down because it's a lot easier and this thing's pretty heavy. Just like that, really easy. It was just heavy with my left arm. Now go ahead and remove the bracket. These are all 14mm. You have 1, 2, 3, the 4th one, you can see part of it right there. And then just pull that bracket out, very easy. That's essentially it for all the lines and all the components for the engine bay. Now let's get inside, let's get the evaporator core removed real quick, and then we can disconnect the wiring and pull the wiring harness off the car as well. First you need to remove your glove box. On the very bottom, you're going to see attached to both sides. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. It looks like you can. It's a bolt / screw here. You can use either a screwdriver or an 8mm socket, and there's one on each side. Go ahead and get both of those removed. Next we need to remove this little bracket. Same thing, either a screwdriver or 8mm head right there on both sides. This side you have a 10mm and an 8mm. So go ahead and get that removed, and then this little arm will come straight down. Now this is the evaporator core. To get it removed, remove the 10mm bolt right there. We need to remove the 10mm bolt right here. And there's one more at the very top. Remove that one also right there. And then pull a carpet back, and you're going to see one also right there. So we need to get all 4 of those 10mm removed. Your next step on the evaporator core, disconnect this plug which goes into the evaporator core. You're just going to squeeze down on the clip and pull it straight up. Now with this one removed, you can slide this down. It just kind of falls out of place. Same with the one that's on this side. You just need to pull it down, and we can kind of shove it around the cables there. Get both of those removed. And once you have that top bolt removed, the evaporator core is just going to kind of slide straight down and out. It's going to fight you sometimes because the wiring is still attached, but it's essentially loose now and free of it. So we're going to slide off the rubber boot, which is attaching it to the firewall. I don't know if you can see, but just push it off over those. Pull the wiring around, and now we can pull it free. The last thing that was holding it when I yanked it right now was, it's the condensation drain tube. Like when this fills up with the extra fluid and water, it drains out to the bottom of the vehicle. Now for the wiring part, once you have the evaporator out of the way, go ahead and disconnect the wiring harness. There's a plug that goes to the car wiring harness, and this one which goes to the AC wiring harness that feeds into the engine bay. Just get that disconnected. What I did next, I just pulled the wiring through the engine bay. I'm gonna have to cut this hole a little bit larger. I don't think I can feed the wiring through it, but I'm still gonna reuse this. There is a block off plug that we can place here, and I'm gonna suggest to Justin to get that so we can put that on there and it seals it from any water or air. But once you have it pulled through, follow the wires, and you're gonna need to open up the fuse box and disconnect it right here. This one, it's a little prong clip, so we need to pry this clip upwards and then slide this part of the wiring harness out. Now the harness looks like it'll have some tape holding it to the engine bay wiring harness. You can see it right there. Go ahead and get that removed. Then we're gonna have to feed it under. Looks like he bent down the bracket, which is for the engine bay wiring harness. So we're gonna need to get it out of here. Looks like, see it, the little white piece right there, it's clipped in. I'm probably just gonna clip it loose. Let's get it fed to the front here. Next, I'm going to cut this free of the little grommet on the firewall. It's making it difficult to pull the wiring through this little area. So I'm going to cut that free and then replace this back onto the firewall. Now with the harness pulled through to the front like this, you'll see it's connected to the engine wiring harness. Actually, these are the headlights, the chassis wiring harness. So go ahead and take off these little plastic clips. If you look at it, you can lift it up right here on the corner, and then this little arm piece slides out. So I'm going to take those out and remove them since we're no longer going to have the 2 sets of wires. Also remove the 10mm bolt right here. This is for the relays. That'll come with the wiring harness. And once you have the relay removed and that wiring that came to the opposite side, you may encounter a couple clips of this nature that are clipped in. I don't know if there's any of those that are still on this wiring harness. Doesn't look like it. And then I almost forgot, take off this little ground wire right here. And then after you take the ground wire off, you should be able to pull the wiring harness free from the vehicle. Just like that. Now we're going to gut the evaporator core. Go ahead and remove, there's a handful of screws surrounding the evaporator core itself. You have 1, 2, 3. Looks like only 3 actually. So remove those 3 on this side. And then these little clips, pop all these off. You can take a little flathead and just kind of pry up and they come straight off. We need to get the evaporator core removed because we're going to put the ventilation duct back in there so the heater works properly still. In case you're wondering about this Phillips screw, you can leave that one alone. This is just for the little sensor that slides into the evaporator core. That one you should be able to just pull right out. It is leave it to the side. And then let's go ahead and separate the 2 halves. And all we're going to do is just pull styrofoam. Looks like it's stuck. A little piece stuck onto the plastic right here. But it's not that big of a deal because that's just for the evaporator core itself. So we're going to pull that. We also don't need it on the bottom. We're going to yank that also. Now I'm going to go and clean this out because it'd be pointless to put it back in all dirty. And I'm going to go ahead and just remove this because since we're not rebuilding an AC system, we're no longer going to need it in there. And that is essentially it, guys. Here's all the parts that I have. Just laid everything out so we could see it all. I put the evaporator core box back together. You're going to have a couple holes in it, but it essentially will do its job with the air flowing back through it so we can keep the heater running. So go ahead and reassemble everything. It's really not a whole lot. This is I'm going to start with under the dash first, just get that put back in. Very easy. And then just all you got to do now is put the radiator stays back on, and then your front bumper, T-bar, and the bumper, and the battery, intake hose, charcoal canister. That's it. It's very, very easy to get it put back together. And in case, I don't know if any of you guys have ever used this before, it's a reverse drill bit set. It actually spins left. That way you can get this piece in there, and I was able to extract what was the remainder of that bolt. Basically you drill a hole into it, and then you spin this. You need this from a tap and die set. You spin this and it actually grabs onto it and it pulls the remainder of that head out. Thankfully, so I'll be able to use that bottom hole for the T-bar now. And here I got it all finished up, guys. Looks a lot cleaner. I left off that air intake tube across the top of the radiator. We also removed the air box underneath and the little ducting for the air box to that little resonator box. It just looks a lot cleaner. I tucked his HID ballasts underneath the bumper because they were just sitting in here before, and it looks a lot nicer and it just looks more clean overall. And if you're curious as to why we removed the AC components today, the owner has plans of putting a larger swap in here, possibly a B16 swap in the near future. So we wanted a real clean engine bay and just eliminate some of that. Plus he's not going to be using the AC any longer on this particular vehicle. And that'll be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Now I can get to work on trying to figure out what that stumbling issue was on this motor.